Formula One and Sun. I'm Tom.
And I'm Oscar.
Well, Oscar, it's good to be back on the couch with you after a few weeks away. We've just watched the Russian Grand Prix, and we'll certainly get into that. But we haven't yet covered the Singapore Grand Prix. I did with my brother Peter in Singapore, a quali review. I was at the race. I had the privilege of being on the main straight, watching the race, which was a fantastic experience. But let's just briefly touch on that. I guess we should probably start with the fact that post-qualifying, there was a disqualification for Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah. He apparently used too much torque. What was it?
Yeah, I think his MG UK delivered a little bit too much power.
Just happens if you run over a bump and it just spins the wheels too much or something?
Apparently.
I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't really deliver him any advantage, but he got disqualified. So we saw a pretty interesting race in Singapore. And of course it ended up with Sebastian Vettel back up on the top step for the first time in 380 odd days or whatever everyone kept saying we were reminded of. What do you remember from the race? How did it play out? What were the highlights for you?
Well, I mean, I don't remember it that well because school. But the highlights for me, it was a good race. Like, I enjoyed it.
It was a cracker of a race. It kind of started with, they all started off pretty. We had Leclerc, Hamilton, Vettel, kind of Verstappen, Bottas, Albon. So all the main teams kind of 1-2 at the beginning, and then Sainz, Hulkenberg behind. The kind of character of the front of the race was at the beginning. It was very slow. Leclerc was kind of backing them all up and saving tyres, and it was all very slow. But the race really changed when Vettel decided to pit early and got the undercut obviously on Hamilton, but also on Leclerc. And in fact, I think Verstappen also pitted early and got the undercut on Hamilton. And so we saw Vettel come out in front of Leclerc, which really infuriated Leclerc.
And Leclerc was screaming about it.
And then Verstappen got the undercut on Hamilton. And really at the front of the race, that was kind of the story of it, wasn't it?
Yeah. As I said, Leclerc was just screaming over the radio the whole time.
Yeah.
And then something I did notice was at the end of the race, Magnussen stole the fastest lap away from Vettel.
Yeah, for the second year in a row, actually. Magnussen got the fastest lap last year as well.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny because the guy came, 17th in the end, but got the fastest lap.
He came last out of everyone.
Yeah, he basically came last.
And then talking about the DNFs, it was really... DNF-wise, it was really nothing interesting. Russell spun into a wall at some point? Oh, no, Magnussen killed Russell. It
was Russell and Grosjean, wasn't it?
Grosjean?
That came together? Yeah, Grosjean continued on, but Russell and Grosjean came together. There was no penalty for that. Yeah, that's right.
That was the first safety car of many other safety cars.
We saw Kvyat was dive bombing Raikkonen, and they came together.
Actually, before that happened, Perez just blew up. Perez's car blew up, and he just stopped on the side of a track, and that was another safety car.
That's right. And in fact, I think after the race, Giovinazzi might have got a penalty for going too close to the cranes under that safety car when they were recovering. Yeah.
And then, as you were saying, Kvyat dive bombed Raikkonen, and his wheel just popped off.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the story.
Yeah, and so we saw Lando had a great race, really strong race to come 7th. But the real story was that Vettel undercut Leclerc, and got out in front. Leclerc was very upset because Vettel kind of got the preferential treatment. So it was a Ferrari 1-2, which was great, and really great to see him. It was at the track in Singapore, what I can tell you is Vettel's very popular in Asia, and it was a really popular victory. Great atmosphere in Singapore. I don't know if they said it on TV. The crowd was about 280,000.
Yeah, they said that on TV.
Which is the second largest crowd they've ever seen. And I've got to tell you, being at the track, fantastic atmosphere, really exciting. At that place, I was on the track just kind of probably about 30 metres after the where they start the race.
Oh, yeah.
So not the start-finish line, because that's actually a bit earlier, but the start of the grid. And not a bad place to sit. I mean, they kind of zoom past you there, but there's a TV right in front of you. Ted Kravitz, who wasn't commentating on TV, was commentating at the track.
Oh,
So
yeah?
he was in the pits like he often is. In fact, I could see him. He was kind of at the Racing Point pit, and he was commentating. So the trackside commentary and having the TV and the
yeah?
atmosphere, a really fantastic experience. Highly recommend it. They opened the track after the race, so my brother and I, we went onto the track and stood in front of the podium, which was exciting, and then walked the track down to what they call the Padang stage, which is right at the other end. So we walked the track with, kind of 150,000 of our closest friends down to the Padang stage where the Red Hot Chili Peppers played after the race, which was, again, fantastic. So if you're ever thinking about going to a Grand Prix, I've only now been to Melbourne and Singapore, but I'd say Singapore probably a better experience than Melbourne, just with everything that's going on, that night race atmosphere, but be prepared to sweat. It was very hot, very humid, and so, great experience and a great race, and great to see a Ferrari 1-2. That was their, third or fourth straight victory? Third straight victory. So that brings us on to Russia, where, of course, we were thinking, Oscar, after qualifying, we might see a fourth straight victory in Russia. But
the Ferraris had been looking very strong the whole weekend, and the Mercedes were kind of nowhere, honestly.
Well, they weren't nowhere, right? Tell me about qualifying. Didn't Hamilton get on P2 in quali?
For the practices, they were kind of nowhere. But for qualifying, Hamilton... qualifying had ended and no one expected. There was it's a Ferrari 1-2, and then Hamilton just pipped Vettel for a second place.
Yeah, that's right. And did we see, was Leclerc dominant through the practice sessions? I think he pretty much was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty dominant through the practice sessions. Once again, just looked to have that pace on Vettel. But as we expected, he put it on pole by a chunk, right? By 3 or 4 tenths, he put it on pole.
Yeah.
But as you say, Vettel, we were expecting to be in P2. Hamilton then pipped Vettel in quali by the narrowest of margins, I think, 300s maybe.
Somehow Verstappen also pipped Bottas.
Yeah, he did. Well. Verstappen had a great lap. The Red Bulls have faded a bit, haven't they? We expected them to be really hot in Singapore. Kind of weren't there.
Well, that was because of the Ferraris' upgrades, though.
Yeah, which... really seem to have played off well for them on these kind of higher downforce, slower circuits.
Which
they had
Russia
some new...
is not, but I mean, they were fast there too.
No, but they've got that straight line speed, which Hamilton keeps going on about. This is how fast they are. But they seem to have solved their woes in the downforce department. And I think they're going to be a threat for the rest of the season. So, we saw the usual kind of Leclerc, Hamilton just pipping Vettel in quali.
Yeah.
Verstappen then pipping Bottas. Then the McLaren's looking good. Sainz, Hulkenberg, Norris. But Grosjean pipping Ricciardo. Ricciardo not looking fast all weekend, really. I mean, they're in the top 10. And we've seen Renault's looking good. But Ricciardo not really in any of the sessions having the pace on Hulkenberg.
And something else interesting, I think everyone with a Honda engine took a penalty.
Yeah, yes, that's right. They all took a new engine, and they're saying this is because they want to be fast in Suzuka, which is the next race. So they want to have nice, fresh engines to run in Suzuka, where they, want to put on a good show for the home crowd. Honda own Suzuka; they own the track.
Yeah, I know. It's like the Honda Suzuka. Well, because Honda's Japanese, so.
And they own Suzuka. They actually own the track. Wow. By the way, because Ricciardo was disqualified in Singapore, he did not get he didn't win the qualifying battle, which he would have won had that result stood. And because he didn't beat Hulkenberg in Russia, he still has not won the qualifying battle. But you assume he will over the next race or two.
Yeah.
Further down the grid, kind of Gasly, Perez, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, Stroll.
I'm pretty sure took. Yeah. No, this is not. This is before penalties. What we're looking at.
Yeah, this is. And then, we saw Kvyat didn't even try to qualify right.
Yeah, I think he had. Because he just had to take a new engine.
Yeah,
It didn't work.
Albon crashed in qualifying, notably. Was going to take penalties anyway. But, he's had a strong start to his Red Bull career.
Yeah.
A little bit of a red mark on his copybook there.
Every time he's started from somewhere near the back. I don't think he's ever started from where he's qualified.
He's had a lot of penalties so far, but we'll get into that. So he crashed, though, embarrassed himself qualifying session. Of course, Russell and Kubica got out, and unfortunately, Kimi Räikkönen too had a bad quali.
Oh yeah.
Session. I think made a mistake right at the end there. Never got a good lap time in.
Yeah.
So we were set with this kind of Leclerc and Hamilton, and then behind Leclerc, Vettel. And this is important. This really shaped the start of the race, because they say in Sochi you're almost better off starting behind P1, because there's a long drag down to the first turn, and you get the slipstream.
Or to the second turn,
actually. Actually, you're kind of right, isn't it? It's kind of the second turn. And so this was going to be an exciting race. And walk us through what happened right at the beginning of the race. I'll go at the start.
At the beginning of the race, I think immediately Vettel pipped Leclerc. He just got a better start.
Yeah, they both got really good starts over Hamilton, didn't they?
Yeah.
But Vettel had that slipstream and made it work.
Both of the McLarens got amazing starts.
Oh, you see them off the front?
Yeah.
They were amazing, weren't they? They just, and I think they got Bottas, or at least Sainz got Bottas, didn't he?
Yeah, Sainz got Bottas, and obviously Verstappen was starting from 10th or 9th.
That's right, because of his penalty. Yep, that's right.
And I think he struggled to get past people at the beginning, I think.
It took him a little while to get going, but once he got going, he just started to overtake people slow and steady. Yeah. And Hamilton, got stuck in behind the Ferraris then. And we saw Bottas eventually pretty quickly got past Sainz a couple of laps later, but got stuck behind Sainz. And further back then, we saw a little bit of action.
So we saw, I think it was Giovinazzi getting squeezed in between the two cars of Ricciardo and Grosjean.
That's right.
And then Grosjean took the worst of it, because Grosjean just ran his rear wheel or into Giovinazzi, and you just
spun into the barrier.
And Ricciardo also spun, but not into the barrier. He did have a puncture, but by that time, Grosjean was called a safety car, so Ricciardo was able to get back to the pit lane and join back to the back of the grid. But he did have damage.
And let's save Ricciardo fans, including us, some misery, and just very quickly cover that off. So Ricciardo limps back to the pits to change his tyre. Clearly had floor damage, had no race pace, couldn't even get past George Russell,
and eventually,
in the toothpaste car, and eventually retired. And let's not speak of it again,
because
it was really hard to watch. But then this had brought out a safety car, but that was early doors, and then. So then, of course, probably the drama of the race was all this talk between the Ferraris. So Vettel's out front.
Again,
the Ferraris. So the Ferraris had good pace. Hamilton couldn't catch up. We should say, Oscar, the Mercedes started on the medium tyre. They had an alternate strategy.
Oh, yeah?
The Ferrari started on a soft. And this will be another reason why the Ferraris got a better start than Hamilton, because they had that soft tyre. It gives you a few metres off the start compared to the medium, which is a harder compound.
Yeah.
And so what happens then is we hear all this radio talk, because clearly the Ferraris had a pre-race agreement that Leclerc would give Vettel the drag. He wouldn't pull in front of Hamilton and give Hamilton the drag. He would give Vettel the drag at the start. Vettel would probably get past, but then he would let Leclerc pass.
Yeah.
And so the team come on the radio saying, okay, Seb, now it's time to let Charles pack, because you got past him as we thought you would.
Yes.
And Vettel's like, you know what? I don't think so. Multi-21 all over again. But to be fair, in this case, Seb had the pace. He was about 1.4 seconds in front.
And
he had pulled out a DRS.
He even increased that lead. By that time, they were still complaining about it. Vettel was 3 seconds ahead of Leclerc.
So what transpires then is eventually Charles is like, I see what's going on here. Fine. You know, whatever. Bit passive-aggressive, frankly. But he's been a bit screwed over by Ferrari once again, or Seb once again. Obviously felt pretty gypped that Seb got the undercut in Singapore, which was fair enough. And so what transpires is the team eventually goes, okay, Seb actually does have the pace and clearly isn't going to yield to Charles. And so they pit Charles a bit earlier and aim to give him the undercut. Now, there's not a natural undercut in Sochi like there is in Singapore.
Yeah, and also Leclerc's pit stop was slow. It wasn't as fast as Vettel's pit stop later on.
Yeah, it wasn't super slow though, was it?
It was 3 seconds.
Yeah, so it wasn't
that bad,
wasn't
but it was
super slow.
slower than Vettel's later on.
And so, but what they do is Seb's like, okay, a few laps later, like, well, should I come in now, and I think Hamilton's pitted by this stage. They're like, no, just stay out a little longer, Seb. And clearly what they're doing is keeping him out longer. I think he's starting to catch a bit of traffic as well by now. And so they deliberately keep him out a bit longer to give Charles the undercut. And so eventually Seb comes in, Charles gets the undercut, is now in P1, Seb's in P2, but what happens?
VSC time.
No, not VSC time.
Well, yeah. Well,
it's breakdown Vettel time.
And then VSC time.
Yeah, so what happens...
There's two are related. You can't say...
Yeah, but the first thing that happens is Seb immediately goes, I've got no K, which is kinetic energy deployment on his MGUK.
And his car dies.
And he immediately breaks down. And this is an absolute tragedy for Ferrari in two ways.
Because one, VSC time.
Because it's VSC time. And, of course, Vettel's out of the race, which he
Hamilton
probably
and Bottas both hadn't pit.
That's right, because they're running long on their medium strategy.
And then they both go in and get the undercut on Leclerc, who had already pit, because everyone's going 40% slower under a VSC. So they get a cheap pit stop and get the undercut
So
on
the pit
Leclerc.
stop, instead of being, 25 seconds, is now 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's about a 10-second saving. Of course, Charles has only just pitted a little bit earlier. So this means Mercedes both get, and a bunch of other people
now
get a
it's Hamilton,
benefit.
Bottas, Leclerc.
That's right. Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc. And Leclerc's now on the medium tyre, but they pit him again, don't they, to go on to the soft tyre to give him a chance. So they decide there's a VSC, and that just as that's about to end, there's a full safety car because George Russell
loses his brakes
Yeah.
and spins into a wall.
Or just breaks into a wall. Yeah.
Crashes into a wall.
Yeah, just runs into plows onwards.
Almost straight after that, Kubica retires because they think he's going to have the same issues, and that's obviously quite dangerous.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Williams has had a great reliability streak this season. The first retirement was actually only in Singapore for the whole season, and then they had a double DNF here in Russia, which is a shame. I mean, obviously they weren't going to get points, but
really
bit of a shame. And so this brings out the full safety car, and so that enables Charles to pit to go to the soft tyre again.
So now he has a sort of tyre advantage over
Slightly,
the
by a couple of laps. They're all on the same tyre now. Verstappen's also caught up, but is actually on the medium. And behind, it worked out well for Magnussen. He actually, I think as a result of this, is up in P6 or 7.
P7, and Sainz is just away in P6.
Yeah, and so it's having actually a great old race.
Actually, Sainz is in P5 at this point.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
right. And so it all shakes out. Safety cars are done. We've got the two Mercedes and Leclerc, and everyone's thinking, okay, Leclerc's got to get past Bottas at the restart pretty quickly and then go after Hamilton. And that's how everyone thought it would play out.
But no.
Not how it played out. Turns out as soon as the safety car goes away, Leclerc has a bit of a shot at Bottas, but doesn't ever really get very close. And it's clear that his car is not liking this hot air. He does this a number of times where he gets close, has a shot, never gets super close to Bottas. Bottas good at defending, and then Leclerc has to back off, cool down, have another go. And this pretty much is the state of play for the rest of the race,
and
isn't
then,
it?
Meanwhile, Albon is silently gaining time on Magnussen.
And making some great moves through the field, frankly.
Yeah.
Albon does some great overtakes, nice and aggressive everywhere, and is just carving his way up from dead last. Getting past Magnussen, obviously had to get past Hülkenberg, Norris, Magnussen, Perez, and eventually past Carlos into P5.
And
Verstappen never really having
the
the
grid
pace.
is still quite tight.
Sorry, say again?
Meanwhile, the grid is still quite tight.
The grid's pretty tight because, of course, it's been condensed up because of these safety cars, that midfield battle. Obviously, everyone's tight, but no one really able to make impressions. We saw a good Toro Rosso battle at some point between Kvyat and Gasly. Eventually, Kvyat reigning supreme, Gasly making a mistake and actually letting Raikkonen through. Oscar, we didn't mention a little incident Raikkonen had right at the beginning of the race.
Which one?
He jumped the start.
Oh, yeah. He just jumped the start.
Yeah.
And then lost positions. You sort of just kept going and overtake.
Yeah, he kind of jumped the start, quite egregiously, stopped, and then restarted, lost positions, and then got handed a pretty big penalty.
He should have just kept going.
Yeah, he probably should have and just taken the penalty. But got a penalty. But then at the end, because Gasly did make a mistake while he was battling Kvyat, Raikkonen got past him. Stroll quietly kind of had a good race, was attacking Hulkenberg at the end.
Perez had a great race, though.
Perez had a really good race, yeah. Magnussen had a good race, came in ninth, really just because he was a beneficiary of the safety car. But once again, those kind of Hasses didn't have good race pace.
So Magnussen just started falling down.
Yeah, and he fell down. Norris got him in the end. You got to say, Norris, okay race to finish P8. But Perez, really good race to finish P7. Sainz, again, just doing really solid work. Kind of lonely, but then Albon, who Vettel got voted driver of the day because of his early driving. To my mind, Albon, probably driver of the day,
same.
to come from the back of the grid into P5. Frustrated his teammate, who probably thought he could pit and go for fastest lap right at the end, but would have lost out probably to Albon if he'd done that.
Leclerc's dropped back from Bottas and says he's going to cool down and go for the fastest lap. Meanwhile, Hamilton's doing the fastest lap in his clean air. He's like 4 seconds ahead of Bottas at this point. And then Hamilton gets the fastest lap in the end.
And takes a full 26 points.
Normally I'd tell you like the other stat, like the, pit stop, fastest pit stop. But there was none. There's no fastest pit stop. End of story.
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
Nobody pitted.
Well, really, there was no pits throughout the race.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw lots of pitting. In fact, I believe it's a rule that you have to pit at least once. Nah. So what's the takeaway here? Ferrari kind of lost themselves the race because of Vettel's mechanical woes. That lost Leclerc the race fundamentally. But the Ferraris had good race pace. I believe if everything goes right for Mercedes, they can win the Constructors at the next race in Japan.
They can?
Yeah, they can.
But Hamilton can't win the championship?
No, I think Bottas is probably too close to him. Interesting race. Sochi, probably a better race than maybe we could have anticipated, particularly those early stages.
It was a little boring towards the end when nothing was
little
happening.
Boring at the end where it kind of got neutralised. No one seemed to be able to overtake.
Everyone was about to overtake but didn't. That frustrated me personally.
Yeah, it was like everyone was close but nothing.
We weren't watching
it
live, just to add on, because for us it was at 6 a.m. and no one wanted to wake
so we
up.
Watched it a few hours later.
Yeah.
Singapore turned out to be a great race, I thought. Enjoyed it. And obviously I was trackside, so it was really, really exciting. Next race is Japan.
And then I'm looking at this, says Japan, Mexico and F1 Hollywood.
Yeah, there's a F1 fan event in Hollywood just before the Austin Grand Prix. Of course, we'll be at the Austin Grand Prix, so we'll both of us will be there, Oscar. So we'll report live from that.
Yep.
Anything more to add? I think that's your lot from us.
No, it's not. Happy sad day.
You want to do a happy sad? Okay.
Let's just go through the constructors not the constructors, the drivers' championship.
Okay, you want to do it reverse order? Or you want
yeah, sure.
Okay.
So Russell is neutral, I'd say.
He's had a pretty couple of bad races. He's had 2 DNFs in a row now.
He hasn't scored any points at all. But
hasn't scored a point.
He won the F2 championship last year.
Yeah, but that doesn't count for this year.
Pretty unfortunate he went to Williams.
Yeah, we should say, Oscar, the F2 championship was decided this weekend in Sochi as well.
De Vries.
De Vries won it. Congratulations to him. He's had a okay season. I don't think it's been as dominant as previous F2 seasons, but he came away with the victory, and he won the race, what do they call it? The feature race.
Yes.
And won the title in the result. Actually, it was a pretty good race too. It was very exciting.
Also, just going to give you a bit of news. So for 2021, Mercedes is now giving engines to McLaren.
That's right, yeah.
Which is, again, happening. It's the same as what's happened before.
Yeah, that's right. They've done that in the past. So that's interesting. Renault will only be supplying themselves.
So what's the law on sort of news right now? So I know that Mercedes has been decided same driver lineup. Ferrari, same driver lineup.
There hasn't been any driver lineup changes since we last talked, I don't think.
I don't think. Ferrari, Vettel's still up for grabs his seat, technically. So is Albon's, and Sainz and Norris has been confirmed. Ricciardo and Ocon in Renault. Toro Rosso, it's still very debatable. Racing Point, I think it's definitely been confirmed.
Yeah, that's been
signed like a 3-year contract.
And Lance's dad owns the team.
Alpha Giovinazzi is probably still debating his contract. Haas has been confirmed. I don't think I've told you that.
Yeah, no, Haas has been
signed
confirmed.
Grosjean.
Well, I think we did because we were surprised by that with Hulkenberg. We thought maybe
and then
taking
Williams,
Grosjean's seat.
Kubica has left the team. Russell will probably try to find a new team.
No, Russell will stay in Williams. He's under contract.
He is?
Yep. And he'll stay there. He'll be waiting for a Mercedes seat to open up. He'll be hoping to get Bottas' seat
Anyway,
the year
back
after.
to very fast, happy, sad. Kubica, sad.
Kubica
happy.
retired.
He's retired. He
Yeah.
had
yeah.
his year and now it's not working.
Yeah, that's right.
Giovinazzi? I don't know.
He's been outperforming Raikkonen in the last few races, so I think, and he needs to if he wants to try and keep that seat. He didn't beat him today, of course. He came dead last. But otherwise, he has been kind of outperforming, so probably sad today, but on an upward swing, I would say.
Yeah, Grosjean is, I don't know.
Grosjean happy he got his seat for next year, so I'd say broadly happy, but...
And then Stroll is happy, I think.
Yeah, Stroll had a
His
pretty good
car's
race today.
getting a lot better.
Yeah, the racing points are on an upward trajectory. He had a pretty good race today, just outside of the points, but I think he acquitted himself quite well.
Yeah, Magnussen's happy. Already has a contract.
Magnussen had a good race today.
And he had a good race, yeah.
Yep.
And then Kimi Räikkönen,
He's had a bit of a downturn in form, but probably doesn't care. He doesn't care.
He's there for fun at the moment in Alpha. Perez is happy.
Perez had a great race
contract.
today. He'd be very happy under contract.
Yeah. Kvyat, he's happy.
He's been performing solidly. I think lots of wheel-to-wheel stuff today with Gasly. He kind of came out on top in the end.
His teammate is still double the points of him.
Yeah, well, he started in Red Bull, so that doesn't count. Yeah.
So Nico Hulkenberg has outperformed Daniel Ricciardo.
Last couple of races, he's outperformed. Didn't out-qualify him really in Singapore, but solidly outperformed in Russia. But he'll be looking for a seat.
He's now tied on points with Daniel Ricciardo, actually.
Yeah, there you go.
So then Ricciardo's probably sad. He's had a couple not very good
After
races.
the really good race in Monza, it's a shame he couldn't keep that momentum. It looked like he would in Singapore. Yeah. Obviously, that went sideways, and then Russia was it's been a mess of a weekend for him.
Lando with 1 point ahead, Ricciardo and Hulkenberg.
Lando pretty strong.
Okay race, I guess.
Yeah, Lando's been pretty strong.
Albon's happy. He's had a few quite good races, judging from where he started.
Yeah, I think Albon can hold his head well. I think Russia was a really good race for him, actually.
Carlos Sainz, he's man of luck, except for
Carlos Sainz is by far the best for the rest.
His luck streak is coming. He's coming back. He had 2 DNFs, I think, two not very good.
Yeah, he had a couple of DNFs and issues, didn't he? But really solid race in Russia, back to form.
Gasly is, I don't know. He's doing okay.
Yeah, he's all right.
Vettel is sad because he just had a DNF.
Yeah, but Vettel's back in fine form.
He had his first
Vettel got
win
driver of the day today. He was faster than Leclerc at the beginning of the race, just on pure race pace. One in Singapore, just a bit because of that strategy. Well, a lot because of the strategy. But in Singapore, it got out-qualified by Leclerc, but I think had faster race pace. So I think he'll be feeling fine.
Max Verstappen is kind of nowhere.
Yeah,
honestly,
he's a bit... Red Bull as a team are a bit nowhere at the moment. They usually develop strong at the back end of the year and really come on strong, but they don't seem to have that. Maybe they've started to focus on their car for next year already. I'm not sure.
And as Martin Brundle would say, Charlie Leclerc.
Yeah, Charlie Leclerc's probably very frustrated that he keeps getting a bit done over by his team.
Yeah.
He keeps playing the team game, but we'll see. I think he's going to be a frustrated guy.
Bottas is happy and Hamilton's going to win the championship.
Yeah, and Hamilton's really... Actually, you saw Hamilton for the first time in a long time. I think really happy he won today. Probably didn't expect it and didn't run away with it. So, yeah, as he said, he kind of, the most kind of delighted we've seen him with a race win for a while, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, Oscar. Well, that's your lot.
So again, email us. That's what I care about.
Yeah,
we need some feedback.
Formula One and Son, is that F1 or Formula One long form? Formula number one.
Yeah.
And Son @gmail.com.
I'm looking at it right now. So
we're on
can
Twitter
get back to you.
Formula One and Son and Reddit with the same username. If you'd like to reach out.
Yeah.
If you like what you hear, please rate us. If you don't, please rate us as well. We'd like your feedback on how we can improve.
Again, email us.
And that's it. Okay, well, Oscar, thanks for joining me back on the couch. Good to be here. And that's your lot from Formula One
and Son.